Where did he take you and where did he abuse you?
So the first abuse happened on the island, and then at Zorro Ranch, New York, Paris, Palm Beach, Saint-Tropez.
Out of all those places that you've just named, was there a particular spot that was more sinister, more scary than the others for you?
Of all the locations, I would say Zorro Ranch was probably the most eerie. Just giant and quiet and literally in the middle of nowhere, and miles of just mountains and dirt for miles.
These are the desert plains and snow-tipped mountains of Santa Fe County in New Mexico. It's a harsh and remote place where the sexual predator, Jeffrey Epstein, built the opulent and oversized lair he named Zorro Ranch. A hideaway in the middle of nowhere, it is finally being forced to give up its terrible secrets of sex abuse, human trafficking, and maybe even murder. Epstein's survivor, Shantae Davies, is deeply haunted by Zorro, where no matter how loud you screamed, no one could hear you.
There was a lot of time spent in my room at Zorro, feeling very much like a mouse trapped in its cage, just kind of waiting until someone would come to my door and say, Jeffrey's ready for his massage now.
What did that really mean?
Rape. Yeah, it was full-on, forced-on sexual rape.
Time is up.
Fighting for survivors like Shantae is Democrat Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury.
We are fighting for you.
Gentlelady's time has expired.
And we will
Members are reminded to direct their remarks to the chair and not a perceived viewing audience, and to refrain from engaging in personalities against the president. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the chair declares that...
She is one of a rare number of people to have seen the unredacted version of the Epstein files, and what she has seen and read has propelled her to action.
There's certainly hundreds of allegations of women who experienced those really dark experiences, and so I think we're really dedicated to getting to the bottom of the truth of what happened in New Mexico and on that property.
Authorities are now searching a ranch in New Mexico once owned by Epstein.
Of all the Epstein properties, Zorro has been the forgotten strand in his evil web. But while the ranch has long been overlooked, it's feared it's where Epstein's worst crimes were committed.
What was it that affected you so much?
I think that for me personally, to read the firsthand accounts of the violence that was committed against survivors and detailed descriptions of the assaults that happened to them by both Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell was truly chilling and dark.
The darkest revelation, the ultimate act of violence, was uncovered in this email alleging the death of 2 young women on the ranch. It's claimed to have been written by a former staffer there, a distressing tip-off forwarded to the FBI in 2019 that was seemingly never investigated.
The email reads, "Did you know somewhere in the hills outside of the Zorro, 2 foreign girls were buried on orders of Jeffrey and Madam G. Both died by strangulation during rough fetish sex."
Not nice to read.
No. I was so alarmed by that particular tip that came into the FBI that I immediately contacted the New Mexico Attorney General to reopen a criminal investigation. And the way that tip was reported matched the pattern of other abuse and transport and trafficking of women, and that's why it raised alarm bells for me.
It's a dark world where a tip-off like that could be considered real. You have to take it seriously.
Yes, absolutely.
The news that came through the release of the files that there had been bodies buried at Zorro Ranch was all news to us. And that really sent a shockwave of concern through our communities that how has this never been resolved? How do we know whether or not this had ever been investigated or closed?
In response to the discovery of the disturbing email, New Mexico State Representative Andrea Romero is spearheading a specially formed Truth Commission to investigate the startling allegations, as well as why the FBI kept them secret back in 2019.
And then never prosecuted anything in New Mexico. They never did an investigation at the time that he was in operations here. It's hard for me to see that any justice was done. If the FBI didn't do it, what can we know? So absolutely, we're trying to pick up the pieces here in New Mexico.
The first step has been to look for the bodies and to finally search the Zorro Ranch. Inexplicably, it's the one Epstein property federal agencies failed to raid upon his death.
They have, at this time, conducted a complete and thorough investigation physically of the property, including imaging of all 7,500 acres of the property. They're right now doing a technical analysis of that imaging data to understand if it reveals anything. One of the things that's very odd is that there was still letters, there was handwritten documents, there were books, there were other things that were still on the property.
And is it believed that that is evidence that could lead to further prosecutions?
Well, what I can tell you is that New Mexico's Department of Justice is deeply committed to turning the Epstein files into Epstein trials.
First recruited into the Epstein world by Ghislaine Maxwell, Shantae Davies was abused by the predator from 2001 to 2005. She remembers the rumours about the burial of the two unknown girls at Zorro. But there were also other terrifying and bizarre accounts shared with her by other victims.
Girls waking up in sort of like a dark room with like a female doctor standing over them, feeling like maybe there is some kind of procedure that had happened that they weren't aware of. And I believe this is in the files. Sure, there's something in there about a baby actually being born and then just disappearing, like Ghislaine taking it. I personally never witnessed anything like that, but I do remember overhearing conversations about trying to create the perfect baby, the perfect gene pool. And I know that there was sort of a hunt, if you will, for the perfect gene pool.
Zorro was a wacky hideaway for Epstein and his cronies and a place to enact their most freakish fantasies, including at one point a plan for a controversial designer baby and human cloning project, in which emails from the files show the maniacal Epstein was prepared to invest in, as long as he remained anonymous.
We were hearing some of the most horrible and heinous things that anyone could imagine. The allegations span everything from the harvesting of sex organs to allegations of women having forced abortions or forced pregnancies or coerced pregnancies. I think when we think about the stories and the span of stories, it sounds fictional. It sounds like a horror film.
And as the Epstein files reveal, men and boys were not spared, with Epstein accused of multiple rapes.
A man actually claims that he met Jeffrey Epstein, was brought to the ranch, he was drugged, and he describes in detail a scene in which multiple young men were raped at the ranch in front of him after he was drugged.
You hear about Jeffrey Epstein's penchant for minors and for young women, but not men. We haven't heard that before.
Yeah, I mean, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were serial abusers. So they really were super predators, and it's clear that this was just how they lived their lives.
I just can't imagine to have a desire to do such evil things so badly. Like what is inside somebody that's so twisted and so dark that they would spend their lives having a fully working vessel of abuse.
But perhaps even more chilling is the revelation in the Epstein files that federal authorities knew years ago but did nothing about these suspected crimes. As you'll see, in an absolute blindside, the FBI claimed to take over the investigation into Epstein only to secretly shut it down.
He was very close to being investigated and arrested and convicted like any other sex abuser in the world.